Okay.
All right. Testing 1, 2, 3. Let's see if you're in this webinar and you can see me and hear me. Please send us a little note just so we can verify that we're up and running properly. We apologize. We're still setting up the stage while I'm live here. Just wanted to go ahead and get started. Hey Jeff, can you confirm that this is up and running?
All right, and thanks, Philip, for starting the questions already. Much appreciated. We're going to get started in just a few seconds.
Let's just confirm that we're actually live before I go.
Do you need a glass of water?
No, I'm okay. All right. Philip has confirmed that he
Thank you,
sees and hears us. Thanks, Philip. All right. Well, first, I just want to thank our customers, anyone that's purchased a Draw on a Business or any of Go Media's products. We truly appreciate it. It's what keeps the lights on here at Go Media and gives us the opportunity to put these webinars on and write books and articles and everything else that leads to sharing our wonderful wisdom with you. It is Cyber Monday, so if you have not purchased a copy of Drawn to Business, I suggest you go to drawontobusiness.com and you can get a physical copy of the book for $17 plus shipping and handling. Also on arsenal.gomedia.us, our normal design resources, we are running Cyber Monday specials, 50% off everything on the website. So please continue to support us. We appreciate it. Thanks to Jeff and Simon, our Arsenal managers, for continuing to push Draw on to Business as well as the rest of our products. We will, I don't know if I'm letting the cat out of the bag here, but new Arsenal store will be launching very shortly, which is very, very exciting. And I'd like to introduce Brian Garvin, who is on the webinar broadcast with us today. He's just going to be on the broadcast in voice only.
Voice only.
He is the Go Media podcast founder, engineer, and celebrity. And where can they find the Go Media podcast, Brian?
For right now, you can find it at GoMediaPodcast.com. We've got that domain pointing to all of the podcast-related stuff, but you can also find just by going to the zine, GoMediaZine.com. In the top right, there's a link to the podcast where you can also find the podcast shows through the RSS feed. So if you're already a subscriber, you can get them there.
I see Philip mentioned that he wanted to get the hard copy book. The shipping is expensive, and that's nothing that we get any cut on. Those shipping costs are actual shipping costs to send that book out. So, I think it is presently somewhere around $7 or $8 if you're in California, maybe $10 to ship the book across the country. So I apologize for that. You can get the ebook directly on drawontobusiness.com. And gosh, I don't know what if we put a special on that for Cyber Monday. Philip, send me an email to bill@gomedia.us, and I will figure something out for you. So I obviously want to encourage everyone to please send questions. This webinar was intended to sort of follow up on our last webinar, so we can rehash or cover topics that we covered last time. If you have any questions that came out of the last webinar that we didn't have time to answer, feel free to send me those. If you've got new questions, you can send me those. We've got an hour to fill, so I'm at your disposal. I did jot down some topics, but I'd rather be answering your questions rather than just covering topics that I've just decided. So we'll start with a question that Philip sent, and he basically asks, how do we come up with our ideas. I'm assuming design ideas, but those could also be business ideas or anything else. Um, I've never really felt like I was in short supply for ideas. If anything, I've traditionally felt like I always have too many ideas to have the time or money to really execute on. However, I would say that I definitely find that a lot of ideas pop into my brain while I'm going through the sales process. So, I think traditionally you think of yourself as selling, sitting down, coming up with an idea, and then designing. What actually happens for me is I sit down to get to know the customer and to find out about the project, and it's at those moments when I'm sitting there having those extended discovery meetings and working on the proposal for a customer that ideas are really popping into my brain. So, one recommendation that I would make is ask lots of questions, more questions than you probably even need. I think that the more you know about a project, know about a company, know about a company's history, the more resources you have and the more context you have, that will allow your brain to come up with ideas. So, I'm a naturally curious person. I love finding out about other people's businesses. I love understanding the ins and outs and the history and the business model and everything about a company. So I just spend a lot of time in that discovery phase, asking lots of questions. Partially because I wanted to be able to estimate the project accurately, but then I'm also trying to become an advisor. One thing I talk about in my book is being an advisor, not an order taker. I think this is a sort of a common business principle that if you want to create value to your customer, you don't just give them what they ask for, but ask lots of questions and then, provide more information and more feedback than they're even asking for. So I just think that the more you know, the easier ideas will pop into your brain. So when you're in those meetings and you're finding out about the project, if you've got any sparks that run through your brain, at that minute, jot them down in a notebook and then present them back to them in your proposal. So I do this a lot. We'll have a little section where it's ideas, it goes in the proposal, and those cool little fun ideas that I come up with while I'm learning about their company, I'll put in the proposal and pitch it like, here's what we're going to do for you. Here's this amazing idea. Another thing is to just take breaks. I think that sometimes you've got to start a project even if you don't have a great idea. There's a lot of collateral work that can be done on design projects before you actually do it. You may not have a good idea for the design, but you may know what the specs are on the project. So you can start by setting up your folders. You can start by setting up your Photoshop or Illustrator document. You can create guides, where are your folds, where's your whatever. Get in the process of pulling together the resources for a project, and then take a break. So try and get your brain thinking about it, then stop, do something else. I do think there is something that's happening subconsciously when you leave things alone and turn your brain off. Suddenly creativity sort of pours out. I know that a lot of people talk about getting great ideas when they're driving. I get the exact same experience. Something about getting in your car, turning your brain off, and just hitting the road, and not having to think of a cool idea will suddenly allow your brain to just open up, and suddenly ideas start popping into your brain. So I think that's something where if I'm struggling on something, sometimes just giving it a rest if you've got the time, sleep on it, push it back a day, whatever, see if creative ideas pop into your brain. Now, occasionally, we do have to come up with ideas, and we've got to do it on a deadline, and there's no time for me to just sit around waiting for my brain to sort of have a, spark of inspiration. So we will have company brainstorming sessions. We'll grab 3 or 4 designers, sometimes the sales staff. We'll go into our conference room. We'll get out Post-it notes, and we'll just start jotting down the most ridiculous things. We'll try and think of anything associated to the project. We'll just throw weird and crazy ideas out there, and then we'll just work those ideas. We'll just talk them through. We'll kick it back and forth. We just, as a group, just sort of like brainstorm stuff. And gosh, I guess those would be my 3 main things: is make sure you're asking enough questions, take breaks from the project, and then sometimes you just got to pull people in and just sit down and have a jam session. Let's see.
You just want to jump right into the next one, Bill?
Sure.
All right, this one's from Dwayne. He says, how does one, as a freelancer, compete, stand out against larger firms and agencies? He just purchased the book this morning, so he's looking forward to the pieces that are on the proposal.
Okay. I mean, there are distinct advantages to being a freelancer or being a small shop. Obviously, your overhead is very low. You can compete dramatically on price. The concerns that are going to be brought up about you being a freelancer or a small shop are going to be... Sorry, excuse me. I'm being distracted. Did you have something for me, Brian, or are you just watching? Am I making noise with my pen? Is that a problem?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Stop doing that.
I'll stop making noise with my pen. The challenge you're going to face is that as a one-man shop is that, and I had some notes actually to talk about this, is confidence in the fact that you're going to be there, that you're going to follow through, that you're going to be professional. So they might go, great, he's a third the cost of the bigger company, but can I trust him? So I think you have to work really hard to overcome that concern when you're coming in at a much lower price point. I also believe that you have a unique opportunity to really specialize, and I can't remember whether or not we talked about this in the last webinar, but the bigger firms get, the more services they have to offer. The more services they offer, the weaker their pitch becomes to a specific service type. So, you can really hone in on a particular industry and a particular product and a particular service and just crush it. Just make yourself all about that one thing, so that when they're like large firm A that has 20 different things they do versus Dwayne who does one freaking thing really well, you're going to win there. Also, being a one-man shop, you're going to be single point of contact with your customer. You can say, I'm selling to you, but you're going to work with me. You see the work that's in my portfolio, I did that. I'm not outsourcing this, to some other artist or designer. I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to deliver it to you. You're going to pay me. So, and then a lot of standing out is, really not so much even about small versus large, but just standard branding and messaging practices that any good, strong company are going to do. Having rock solid branding, having a really good, voice and persona behind your brand. The professionalism that I talked about, and yeah, let me see here. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right. Why not just hop right into personal branding? I know that was something you want to talk about today.
Sure. So it was kind of funny. So last webinar, someone took a side shot of me, and I was wearing my sweater vest and my white shirt, but my pants, I was wearing these Adidas running pants, and that image was posted on Facebook, and a few people thought that was kind of funny that I was wearing with a dress shirt and a sweater vest and Adidas running pants, and it was sort of like, what's going on here? Like, what is this outfit that this guy is wearing? And so I wanted to sort of explain a little bit. So about 2 or 3, maybe 4 years ago, I read this great article on your brand persona, and the case study that they did was of the Smashing Pumpkins. So the Smashing Pumpkins were a rock band that had been around for many years, and they basically had the Smashing Pumpkins sound. They were touring a lot. They're doing everything to be a successful band, but for whatever reason, they just were not catching on. And so someone came along and said, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but basically someone went to Billy Corgan and said, you've got a great sound, but your look to your band is kind of a little bit weak, like you got to have a persona, you got to have a personality, you got to have something that people will cling to, that they'll aspire to, that they'll think is cool. And so Billy Corgan shaved his head, and he put on this T-shirt that said Zero on it, and next thing you know, the band takes off. And this whole article just talked about establishing a persona for yourself, and I thought that was awesome. I thought that was such a cool idea, and I started to think about, who am I? Who is William A. Beachy? And I think that if you ask a question like, who am I? Anyone is such a diverse group of things, and the personalities are so complex that you really can't hone it down into one little stereotypical look or whatever. But if you're trying to sell your company, or if you're trying to sell yourself as a band, or if you're trying to sell your persona as a leader, there are advantages to branding yourself. Not just a logo and a name, but how you dress, So I actually cognitively went out and decided that I was going to create the Bill Beachy brand. And so I spent probably 2 or 3 months, bouncing around, shopping, trying on different outfits, trying to decide, what is the Bill Beachy brand? Who am I? What do I look like? And I kind of really I've always liked sweater vests. I was a fan of Jim Tressel, a former coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. He always wore sweater vests. And I wanted to come across a little intellectual, professional, business, but, still, kind of rock and roll. I've got a big goatee and dark features. So as I went through this process of trying on these different outfits, the sweater vest and this white shirt, I felt, it just really personified who I felt like I was, or at least who I wanted to be. And so that was it. And so I decided then, whenever I was in public at a speaking engagement, or when I was being photographed for, profile picture, for my profile picture on our website, on a webinar, for the book, whatever it is, that this was going to be my uniform, that I was going to wear this so that people could identify me, that they had a visual cue to say, that's Bill Beachy. He's the guy with the white shirt and the black sweater vest on. And, Einstein always wore the exact same suit. Steve Jobs always wore the exact same shirt. And, bands do this all the time. Kiss is probably one of the more famous bands for having costumes that really personified who they were. And, people will actually question, how good Kiss's music was, but they did an amazing job of branding themselves and putting this persona out there. So when you're selling yourself and you're selling your company and you're selling your design services, try to think about, who is this persona of your company? It's not just, hey, we do logos. Are you the rock and roll shop? Are you going to be wearing black leather and, have tattoos and, long hair, and, you're going to really personify your company brand, and your art style is, really, tough and rock and roll? Or if you're pitching to larger corporations and they're spending more money on you, having that brand persona might be a little bit too, unreliable from their perspective. They might want someone in a suit and a tie. So for some people, their company persona might be, someone in a three-piece suit and, nice polished shoes and cufflinks and all the rest of it. You have to decide what your brand persona is going to be, and then you need to learn how to embody that. I remember I had a client once, and once in a while I'll shave my goatee off just because it kind of gets annoying and I want to get a clean start. And I had shaved my goatee, and I go meet with a longtime customer of mine, and he's like, "What did you do? Grow your goatee back, man. I'm not hiring a clean corporate guy. I want the artist, So being an artist and having a goatee was part of my persona. It was one of the reasons why he hired me. We actually just landed a pretty big gig with a local local government agency, but it was an agency within the government that deals with a lot of kids. They wanted artists, and when we went in and pitch ourselves, we talked a lot about us being artists. And it doesn't hurt that we go in with non-traditional clothing and, me having a goatee. In fact, this outfit that I'm wearing for you is not exactly the same outfit that I wear for my sales calls. So I have a slightly different costume, if you will. It's just the clothes that I wear when I go out on design service sales calls. I think I dress a little bit more hipstery than I do with this particular uniform on. So yeah. So think it's easy to think through your company and be like, well, we want a nice website and we want this brand, and certainly I think most people out there are graphic designers, so they're thinking very much visually about the graphic design elements that they're creating. But there is this visual persona that goes beyond just your branding. I mean, there's this personality, and one way to think of it is you're an actor in a movie. So who is your character? What character are you playing? What is that character wearing? What do they sound like? Create that persona and then push that persona across all of your touch points with your customers. And some of that is also your written voice. So as graphic designers, I don't think we think so much about how we type, like what are the words that we use? What is our personality when we're writing our copy for our marketing materials? You can write, C-level type copy. This is sort of stuff that appeals to, Fortune 1000 corporate level executives, or you can write sort of fun, campy, fun stuff like MailChimp has got great copy. It's really silly. It's kind of fun, but it's very user friendly, and it speaks to a certain type of person. So, so think about those things. And related to this is, by the way, jump in if there's any questions. Okay, so related to this is, building customer confidence. And, you've got to dress for success. So if you're having an engagement with a customer and the project is $500 and they see a couple items in your portfolio, they'll go, okay, not big risk. I met this guy, trust him, I'll have him do this work. But as your firm grows and as you get bigger and bigger customers with larger and larger projects, a question that comes up to Go Media regularly these days is we're sending out $10, $20, $30, $40, $50, $60,000 up proposals is, are you going to be around? Are you going to be around to support this website you're about to build for us 5 years from now? You need to instill confidence in your customers that, not only are you going to do a good job, but you're going to be around to support that work. So for Go Media, I can say, well, I've been doing this since 1997. It's 15 years I've been building this. We own our own building on Lorraine Avenue. We just invested almost $50,000 in a storefront renovation. We've got a brand new sign. And I just hired 2 new employees. So we're not going anywhere. I've got a great case to make for why they can trust that this company's not going anywhere. And in fact, we're growing. So you need to figure out how to instill that confidence in your customers. You might not have that lineage and that sort of, overwhelming, catalog of evidence to convince your potential customers that you're not going anywhere. So, this starts with the way you dress. I mean, I've got vendors that are, videographers that we hire regularly, and they look like a bunch of high school skateboarders. And that's fine because we've gotten to know them, we've built up trust in them, and they do great work. But periodically, if I'm selling to a larger company and I have to make a recommendation for a video crew, it's very hard for me to suggest them because I know that they look like a bunch of high school skaters, and they're going to walk into that meeting, and my big customer is going to go, whoa, who are these guys? These don't seem like someone I can trust. So, you've got to learn how to build confidence, and it doesn't mean selling out. It doesn't mean that if I'm not a suit and tie kind of guy that I'm going to forced myself into that because you've got to be genuine. You've got to be passionate about who you are and how you dress. But at the same token, just be aware that, how you dress and how you act and the words that you use all will influence a customer. And, they're more likely to hire you if they trust you and if they, see lots of evidence that you're going to be able to be professional and follow through. Because that's a major concern when hiring creatives is, are they going to hit their deadlines? Are they going to come in on budget? Are they going to stick around and support this, a year from now, 2 years from now? And dressing is part of that, and so is everything else. So, did I see a question pop up, Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify it real quick. So let's hold off just a second.
Okay.
But you were going into, the overall idea that it's good to go into the personal branding to give yourself an image and that sort of thing. But what if you don't? Like, is that going to hurt your overall ability to still be able to land clients if you're just dressing up in a suit and tie every single time they see you, or you're just dressing up differently every single time? Is there a real case against not being as confident in that sort of side of things? If you get what I'm asking.
No, I'm a little confused.
That's me vamping. All right, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and get into the next question then. I'll think about that one.
Okay.
All right. So this is from Philip in the live chat, and he says, when doing web design, how much do you go into user experience and usability, and how? So basically, how much time do we spend on coming up with ideas and personas, wireframes, prototypes, that sort of thing?
So every project starts with information architecture, and that literally starts as just a typewritten list of pages. Anything that is significant in terms of design or development that would fall into the categories of functionality or content, we will also list those items out in our information architecture or typewritten sitemap for the website that we're going to build. And that frequently can take a lot of time just figuring out how to categorize and where to put all the content. Once that's done, Brian will frequently do this work, is we will create a visual sitemap of that. It's just taking that written sitemap and taking it one step further. It allows us to just sort of help visualize where all this content is going in terms of categorization. And those are usually large buckets that are the main navigation and then sub-navs. Most of the work GoMedia does is not user experience intensive, and what I mean by that is we're doing a lot of traditional web page and content layout stuff. So I really think that user experience exploration becomes very intensive when you're developing a totally new experience that people haven't had before, that you don't build regularly, and that requires, lots of iterations and testing in order to figure that out. So an example might be we did a project for Cardinal Commerce. They wanted a web app. It was like a financial thing where you could go in and do some planning and read some reports and stuff. And it was an app for an iPad, and this was just kind of a very new thing. And so there was a lot of sketching and a lot of iterations and a lot of exploration. I would say that on an average web development that GoMedia is doing, it's not that extensive. It's not to say that we don't think about it, and certainly there are certain sections and pages where we do actually work up sketches for how the user experience is going to be, and we'll do a little sketch and go, well, they click this button and then it'll move on to that button. I think we did this very, very, very roughly with a recent campaign that we did with Cozy. Cozy.org/warm and bright. We had to figure out what are the 3 or 4 steps that a user would go through as they shared this campaign on their social media feeds. But we just do so many of the same things you know, homepage, landing page, informational landing pages, informational pages generally, contact form. We have just built so many of these that we have sort of figured out what the best user experience is. So we're not having to invest so much of that, on a project by project basis. I don't know, Brian. Do you want to chime in here? You work on our wireframes and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I think for more just a majority of what we're doing, it's more or less let's prioritize the content. So hopefully at the beginning of the project we do have that content available, and then at that point we're just trying to organize it in a way. Obviously the home page is going to have maybe a slider, or maybe it's going to have 3 call to action areas, and just a matter of what is the main purpose of the website? Is it just a general brochure where you want the user to be able to find out what your about information is, how to contact you, that sort of thing? Is that important? Or is the important stuff like product information, especially for shopping carts, where the homepage is very intensive as far as getting that product information out? So it kind of varies, but for the most part, you're right. With what we do, it's more of less intensive. It's here is the content we have available and we want to provide for our users. How can we prioritize that so when the user is going through the general F pattern, that they're seeing the right information in the right order, which is also helpful now that we're doing more responsive stuff. So now that we've with responsive web design, we still want to be able to prioritize so that if the user is on desktop, they're seeing it one way, but they're still accessing the same information in the same order as a smaller mobile device.
And I would say that on the far end of the spectrum, I have visited extremely large design firms that literally have user testing rooms that are full of computers, and they will actually mock up working versions of websites. They will put people in those rooms to actually use it. They're tracking eye movement. They're tracking where they're clicking. They've got a one-way mirror where they've got a team of developers that are watching them use the actual website they've built. They got another glass wall, and then they've got the customers watching the usability crew watching the users. I mean, I've seen some amazing things. There's firms out there that are doing incredible user testing, and there are websites where you can upload designs and have users go in and test them, and you can actually pay per person that you have go in and test those. And I know we've got some. I can post. We can post some links. Would you take a note, Brian?
Yeah.
Post some links. There's a couple different sites. We haven't used them very often, but they're out there. So that is on one end of the spectrum. Just to reiterate what our sort of common every project steps are is every web development project typically gets a written sitemap, a visual sitemap, wireframes, and then we go into designing. And that is typically enough steps that we've pretty much figured out what it is that we're going to do when we get to the design phase, and have fewer hiccups down the line as we're developing.
And just real quick to kind of clarify, wireframes mean different things for different people. Sometimes just static designs that you do in Photoshop or in Google Drive, or a graphics type program where you're just putting boxes in different places. We do. It's not really wireframing. I guess it's more of a prototyping. So it's not a full. It's basically a combination of wireframes and prototyping, where we still have the boxes, but it's a working HTML version, so you can see how things are moving. Especially for responsive, you can click through to different pages, and the site is pretty. It's pretty much functional. It's still static. It's not always showing content, but it's something that the client can see and be able to view in their browser, and get involved in the entire experience of how all that information is going to work prior to us going into designs.
And then in terms of actually getting into that design phase, so once those wireframes are done and the designers have a sense of what content's going on the page, what the priority is, what the size of the items are. We typically do in a first round, we will do a home page and one key interior page. So we've picked 2 actual pages that we're going to design. We then usually have 2 to 4 designers creating anywhere from 2 to 4 designs of each of those. So when we post proofs, they're getting 2 to 4 distinct visual ideas, and that idea designed over a home page and one interior page, and then we get feedback from the customer, and we work back and forth on those 2 key pages, the home page and one interior page, until they feel like, yes, that is communicating the look and feel that I'm after. I'm excited about that design. We will then start applying that design motif to all the rest of the interior pages. So, taking it one step further, that's usually the next step, is applying that design.
Real quick, just before we continue, obviously everyone who is watching here live and answering questions, it's drawntobusiness.com. That's more information of the book, how to obtain a copy, as well as how to get in contact with us if you have any other questions. And if you're still not sure if you want the book, there's definitely ability to get in contact with us. Find out what other people are saying in the comments area, and also you can just see what is all available as far as all of these different tiers that we have available as far as the packages go. So, Bill, do you want to go into that real quick, just to give a brief rundown of what those packages are?
Sure. Could you bring those up, Brian? So we initially launched the book, and the book is absolutely the centerpiece of this whole thing. I mean, the wisdom that is contained in the book is, 15 years of me building Go Media, going through all the pain and suffering of starting your first business, learning all of the business lessons, learning all of the design firm specific stuff, and me just doing a brain dump of all of these things. And I write the book in sort of an autobiographical sort of way. There's a lot of storyline about me, but inherent in all those stories is this wisdom about how to be a more successful freelancer, start to build a design firm, grow a design firm, manage people, all the things you might need to do as a middle manager of a design team, if that's your situation. And then I marry that with really on the streets practical advice. So I didn't want to just tell a story and not say, okay, and here's the exact piece of software I use, because whenever I read business books, which I do all the time, I love them, I love business biographies, I'm always like, great, I hear this wonderful story about how he turned the company around, and generally he did this, but I want to know the specifics. How many people did he hire? What software did he use? How much money did he invest? I love those details, so I made sure to pour all of those details into my book. And then the other thing I did was I went out and interviewed owners of other design firms, firms that I knew and wanted to learn from because they were having great success. And so I put together a 77-question questionnaire, which was overwhelming. A number of people I contacted got about a third of the way through it and stopped because they just didn't have the time. But I interviewed all these companies, and I read through all these answers, and everything that I was reading was just reinforcing what I had put into my book, basically. And so I've got all these great quotes, and I have included those in the book as well. So you've got my experience, and you've got like 14 other design firm owners' experience, plus our accountant, which asked to remain anonymous because he's got plenty of work, and Sharon Torek of Torek Licata, a legal firm that specializes in intellectual property and creative firms. So I did a long interview with her. So I wanted to get some of that legal stuff that is also very hard to find. When you're first getting started, starting your business, it can be brutal. Just like, what do I need to do to be legal? Do I need to have a license? What kind of taxes do I pay? Where do I pay them? All these sorts of things I wanted to answer in the book. So I really pushed to get all those answers in the book, married with my sort of anecdotal stories of all the pain and suffering that I've been through. So that's the book. So start there. If nothing else, get that book. You can either get a hard copy of the book, or you can get the ebook, which is a little cheaper if you want that. The Plus package. So obviously, when you're first getting started, this is great that I've sort of brought some of this stuff up in the book. But wouldn't it be wonderful if I had documents that would help me write a business plan, or quick tips on how to land projects, or quick tips on how to negotiate. And so the Plus package has the book plus 20 PDFs and templates, 6 bonus videos. Some of those are those are all me, sort of giving you tidbits of information on being a better freelancer or small business owner. And you get the paperback, and you get the actual physical paper edition, which is really great. It's full of art. I think that everyone that gets it will really enjoy it. And then the Pro package, it's everything that's in the Plus package. Plus, you get the Threads Not Dead ebook. You get our Freelance Survival Kit, which has some legal documents, discovery questionnaires, proposal template, and then we have also included 3 additional design-related video tutorials. So those are the packages: ebook, paperback, Plus package, and Pro package. You can read all of this on Drawn to Business. I'm here. I didn't want this webinar to become a sales pitch, but since you asked, Brian, I went ahead and filled it in. So if people have questions on anything, please feel free to send us questions. I'm here to answer. That's what I'm here for. So I will chat unless there's a question.
Nope.
Nope. All right. So I would like to chat a little bit about recruiting workers and volunteers. So, I had a close friend that's starting her art-related business recently come to me, and she was talking through her business model, and she was talking through her struggles, and she had a bunch of questions for me. And at one point, it came up that she really needed help, and she really needed some workers, and she said she couldn't afford them. And I said, well, what do you need done, and how much are people demanding that you pay them, And she kind of was like, well, I haven't even asked. I haven't even tried to get anyone to help me because, I can't afford to pay them. I'm like, well, how do you even know what they want or what it's going to cost to get help? And she sort of gave me some numbers that were just, what she thought the going rate were for employees in this particular field. And when I was starting Go Media, I had that same perspective that in order for me to get anyone to help, in order for me to get anyone to work with me, I had to basically have a textbook definition of a job based on some, perceived, corporate, flow chart of, employee structure, and along with that particular job title, there was a acceptable price range of what you had to pay that person, and if you couldn't afford that, then there would be no way to get an employee or to get someone to help you build your business. And I was very scared to even ask people if they'd be willing to help me with my business. I was very scared to ask them to work for what I perceived for below what I perceived to be, the standard for pricing, for paying people. And So I spent a long time like that, and then when I did hire people in that first round, I overpaid them. I paid wages that were well beyond what I could actually afford because I perceived that that's what I had to pay them, and I quickly found myself losing money. And within about 6 months of hiring this person that I agreed to pay more than I knew I could probably afford, I had to let them go because I was broke again. So um, I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't be afraid to sell your vision. Don't be afraid to try and ask people to volunteer. I read a great story once about a gentleman, I think this was over in the UK. He started a business. He had a vision for the business. He had a great business plan. He knew how to go out and sell. And what the business did was build countertops for kitchens. And his first 9 employees that he brought into the firm, he said, I am not going to be able to pay you for the first 6 months that you are here working for me, but I think this is going to be a very successful company. I want you to come on board. You're going to be on the ground floor of this new company, and I promise you that if you come work for me, if it works, you will be rewarded. And of course I will pay you for this first 6 months, but it's just going to have to happen later. And he was able to convince 9 people to come on board and work like dogs, building countertops to help him get his company off the ground and running. And he did become successful. He became very successful. And years later, after the company was up and running and grew very large, he sold the company for many, many millions of dollars, and he actually gave each one of those 9 employees a check for $1 million apiece for having the confidence and coming on that first 6 months and working without pay. When I was starting Go Media, I was so unconfident about what this thing was going to become, and I am so loyal and so beholden to making sure that I'm following through on my promises that I basically wouldn't promise anyone anything because I was afraid to. I was afraid to sell people on the vision of what Go Media could become because I just didn't trust it. And it took me about 8, 9, 10 years before I finally reached a point where I was confident enough to tell someone, hey, we're going to build a great company here. This is going to be awesome. Things are going to go well. The money's going to come. We're going to figure it out, and when we do, everyone's going to get not only a great place to work, but they're going to get great pay. So as soon as I started doing that, people really started jumping on board. And, if you look at something like Weapons of Mass Creation Fest, which is the design conference we throw, we couldn't even throw that without volunteers. But it's an amazing thing. It's highly inspirational. All of these artists come together. It's something that people want to be a part of. And so we ask for volunteers, and we get tons of volunteers every single year that come out and support that event. So I think that when you're small and you're getting started, you have to tell yourself that, as long as I promise myself that I'm going to follow through on this and I'm going to work as hard as I can to build this thing right, then you shouldn't feel bad about recruiting volunteers or recruiting staff, even if it's below what you would like to be able to pay them, so long as you are a person of your word and you follow through and you work hard for their benefit. And, you will find that people will get on board. They will jump on your company. They will help you out, whether that's just with taking a slightly lower pay to work with you or be a volunteer or, whatever it might be, because, people care more about, people want more out of their job than just high pay. At the end of the day, life is not just about making a lot of money. In fact, a lot of people that make a lot of money are really miserable. You need to give them a livable wage, but if you sell a vision and you give them a plan and you give them a timeline and you bust your butt and they can see that you're working hard to build your company, then people will stick with you and they'll help you grow your business. So, don't be afraid to sell the vision of what you're building. Get people on board and, accept their help. Don't be afraid to let people around you help grow your business, obviously, when you're successful. pay it forward, etc.
Yeah, and it's also good to be transparent, about what it's going to take to get to the point where we're all financially healthy, or that we are at a point where this is deemed successful. For me, not Go Media related, but I've got a community blog that I run, and the goal is to be financially stable, to have that blog sell enough ads, or bring enough sponsors to make it worthwhile for everyone, so that all the writers get paid, and we all are bringing in something for the work we're doing. So sell the vision, but be transparent of what it's actually going to take to get to the point where we're all getting out of it what we are putting into it, kind of thing as well.
Yeah, and I also try to be very upfront too about what the realities of today are. It's okay to say, here's what I'm promising you now. This is what I know we can do, and the next step is where we're going. Now, did you guys have a time frame that you put on it, Brian, that you sort of mapped out where you thought your growth needed to be and where the revenues would then come in over the course of 3 or 5 years?
Yeah. Realistically, our hope is not to have that take that long.
You're like, 6 months, guys. Come on, jump on board. Let's go.
But we knew it was going to take at least a year to get to the point where we could take a step back and assess, where we are. So yeah, I mean, we did have a long-term goal. We knew after our research what it was going to take to start, because we are doing ad sales, what it was going to take for those ad sales, whether it's Google ads or buy-sell ads or whatever we're doing, to actually start, turning up money that we could actually hand out, kind of thing. But as far as time frame, we really didn't know. We're learning on the job, just like most entrepreneurs are, and most startups are.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that we had a viewer ask about upgrading if they bought the ebook and they wanted the physical book.
Correct.
Yeah, please send Jeff at gomedia.us an email. He can set a coupon code up for you so that you can upgrade. If you've got an ebook and you want the physical book, I highly recommend the physical book. It's great. We make more money on the ebook, but the physical book, it's just got a great feel to it, and it's really easier to read. I also noticed Philip asked about, he said he's a freelancer. He's never really thought about building a firm, and what does it take to do that? And I think the biggest thing is just your mental perception of what you're going to do and what you want to be. I started with no business education, freelancing on my own, and have built a firm. So, if you are of the mindset that I'm a freelancer and you work and you've got some profit at the end of the year, your perception might be, well, great, I've got extra money, I can go buy that wave runner that I've always wanted. If you want to build a design firm, your perception of what you're trying to get out of life needs to shift. And if part of that is, hey, I want to build a design firm, maybe now that profit that you came away with on your freelancing gig is not going to be poured into a wave runner, but you're going to have to, put that money into buying new equipment and another desk, and then using that money to help you go out and find an employee to start, working with you. And I mean, there are shortcuts, but my general process was very organic. It was one project, $1 of profit, $1 reinvested back in the company. Started with, me, tried to hire employees, failed. I should say hired employees, went bankrupt. Went back to work, saved up money, hired employees. I shouldn't say bankrupt. I never went bankrupt. Went broke. Hired employees, went broke, fired the employees, went back to work, saved up money, hired more employees. I did that about four times or so before I finally figured out how to sell at the right price and how to hire an employee at the right dollar figure that I could actually keep the whole thing running. I can remember distinctly the end of that first year where I had an employee for a whole year and hadn't had to fire them. I was like, success! I actually kept an employee for an entire year and I still have as much money in the bank account as I started. So, and you just do that one day at a time. I mean, they talk about the growth mindset. When I went through a lot of my business courses and stuff, they say businesses tend to fall into these different categories, and you've got people that have a mature business and they're not really trying to grow it. They're just running it and they're making their money. If you are a freelancer, you're kind of in that place. It doesn't take much to set up. If you've got enough business to keep yourself busy, great. You're basically in a mature place where you're working, you're making your annual income, whatever you want that to be, and you're content, and you just maintain that. As soon as you want to build a design firm, you've got to shift that mental set to growth mentality. How do I pour my profits back into the business to create more business? And there's wonderful, amazing rewards that come along with that, but as I outline in my book, there's also a lot of things that you have to deal with in starting your own firm. It's a very different animal than just working as a freelancer. I mean, there's absolutely a ton of overlap in terms of the knowledge that's in my book that is extremely useful, that's going to make you a way better freelancer if you adopt some of the principles and tactics that I use. But if you wanted to start a firm, which I of course chose to do, you're going to have a whole other pile of challenges ahead of you. So.
Now we got time for one last question, just because today's session was only an hour. So let's just go with it. The question that we have a hard time answering. What's going on with the audiobook?
What's going on with the audiobook? So this is a classic. You own your own firm and you're being pulled in 100 different directions. So I started recording the audiobook. I spent a day on it, and I discovered that reading and speaking out loud for hours on end is more difficult than I had realized. I'm hoping I'll get into a better rhythm over time with it and get a little faster, but we started it, and it's not available yet. Brian and I had a short conversation today about when we would get that out the door. So, this is a classic business thing where we've landed a bunch of huge projects in the last couple of weeks, which is fantastic, but that's pulling all of my time and energy towards doing that work and pulling it away from the audiobook. So hopefully we'll have it done in, I'll say, 4 or 5 weeks.
Wow.
Does that seem fast, Brian?
I was going to be good with just like first quarter of 2014.
First quarter of 2014. I love it. That's what we're going to do. First quarter of 2014. Yep. So, and with that, our hour is complete. Thanks again to everyone that tuned in. If anyone's got any specific questions, feel free to email me, bill@gomedia.us. Brian, thanks for sticking around and being on there with me. You're always a great added personality to any of our podcasts or the webinars. So hopefully we'll do this again in a month, sometime in January, early January probably. And in the meantime, have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you in the new year.
Yeah, and real quick, there's if you tuned in late or don't want to listen to the full episode or the full webinar here and the Q&A from last month, just because there's a lot of gaps, and listening wise, I'm sure it's somewhat difficult to get through, but we will be editing it down for the next edition of the Go Media podcast, just to make it a little bit easier to listen to and more concise. So definitely check out for that as well. That's it.
Great. Thanks, everyone.